What does long-term relationship building look like? Often we don't dig into this question and explore the power of relationships. And many times we're not sure where to start and can even feel awkward about it. It's always the right time to build relationships, but it will likely require you to get out of your comfort zone. In this episode, Relationship Building for Unconventional Success. Welcome to Meet the Author Live. I'm your host, John Saunders, founder of Forward Advisory Solutions, a coaching and consultancy firm and author of The Optimizer, Building and Leading a Team of Serial Innovators. My firm was built on the foundation of over 20 years as a sales executive and leader on Wall Street with a relentless focus on collaborative innovation and problem solving. This show offers you thought leadership, wisdom through live conversations with the ability to get your get your questions answered in real time. To start, please drop in the chat where you're joining us from. It's always great to see where our audience is coming in from and make sure we know how to use the chat because we'll use that about at the halfway point here to get your questions answered. In today's episode, we'll meet author and founder Scott Montgomery, who published his book, How Did You Get Here? Lessons of Unconventional Success, last year and just released his audiobook recently. His book shows us success in life isn't about where you start, but how you approach each and every day. Scott's a Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and Amazon best-selling author for his contribution to success mindsets. He's responsible for overseeing the day-to-day operations, consulting services, and sales teams at WorldGate LLC. Scott's leadership approach starts with employee well-being, growth, and fostering a learner mindset. He leads by example on learning and has earned an International Coaching Federation has earned an International Coaching Federation on leadership certification on leadership and organizational well-being. Scott's priority is his family. He's a loving husband of over 20 years and a proud hands-on father of 3 teens, including twins. He enjoys long walks with his wife and loves varying pursuits of physical fitness. He's competed in more than 15 triathlons. I'm just tired thinking about that, as well as an Ironman 70.3, and aspires to do a full Ironman one day. Scott, great to see you. Welcome to the show.
John, thank you for having me. And that was a great introduction. I appreciate all the acknowledgments of the things that I've been through. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Well, the pleasure is mine. You've had an unbelievable run. And as I've read your book, I can't tell you how many times I just felt the pain of what you were feeling as a young kid growing up in a chaotic environment and what that was like. But, before we go there, let's talk about this triathlon thing here for a minute.
Okay.
I considered at one point running a marathon and actually got injured and never did it. Like, how do you even get ready for one of these things? What does that look like?
Well, it looks like a lot of training. It looks like a lot of time away from either the family or the office. And there's a lot of dedication, mind over desire, for sure. Very hectic, very, very busy.
But triathlon, right? Biking, running, swimming.
Yeah,
it's exhausting just to think about. And yet you've done it. And, how did you, when you think about sort of the training from your very first one, what did that sort of look like?
Yeah, I think, I did a couple, I did local. I started smaller. I did the sprint triathlons, and then I went into Olympic sized triathlons. And then I decided to carve out a half Ironman in the attempts or the hopes that I would move into a full Ironman. Which I still haven't done yet, but it's still on the list. We'll see how far I get there. But you have to parse it out. And I think that's the key. The smaller races, you kind of learn how to blend the running, the biking, and the swimming together. Then a little bit longer, you learn the endurance of those 3 activities and how they work together. And then you kind of add in the nutrition component and the hydration component. And then as you get into the longer ones still, I did find quite a few errors in the hydration component. I found myself cramping a lot that first go around. So there's almost as having been disqualified from the first one, I'm sure we'll get into that. It was almost a blessing because I was going to have a hard time running because my hydration was not on point.
Can you imagine it's cramping with like 20 miles left or something like this, right?
Yeah. That's painful. Pretty much what happened. That's pretty much what happened in the second one.
And did you do all the training by yourself?
I did. I actually had a trainer. I had a friend of mine who had done a couple Ironmans actually, and he was a companion trainer. So he was sort of a pseudo professional, but we went at it organically. So he would run with me. We would ride together. We would swim together. He was at the same gym I was at, and he would give me the pointers. But I didn't go notebook for line by line. I sort of went with what felt right. It was the goal to accomplish it. It was to finish it. Was more my concern than, being fast and winning it.
And you've built you found the right support, the right resources, the right habits to get it done, which has been a theme throughout your life, which I find fascinating. And certainly, I've developed I think, some really interesting relationships over that time. When you think about relationships, and it's such a key theme to your book, how
Yeah.
they kind of shaped different aspects of your life, particularly your career, and how they played a
Well,
role.
and I think it's an interesting thing, and I do say that that's one of the main reasons I wrote my book, is to kind of um, put together a legacy piece of some of the folks that impacted me most in my career. But I did learn early on, putting work as a safe place, or as a place that I can escape the chaos I was developing for myself in my earlier years. I learned that there's a vast array of people that are interested in supporting you, and if you guys share the same vision, it can be very bonding, and you can connect with people, and very powerful things can happen as a result. And part of what I attribute to my entire career is the power of those relationships. So, I didn't come from the idea that I was going to open up a consulting firm. I didn't know that that was going to be a value. It became more of a mission based sort of initiative as I developed relationships inside my career at Verizon. I was at Verizon for 15 years, almost 15 years, and met a lot of people and saw the value of how relationships can lift people's careers and personal lives. As a matter of fact, the minister that married my wife and I was the husband of one of my coworkers at Verizon, and that's how we met. So, I never underestimate the power of who knows who, or how you can support or they can support you in networking and in relationships. It really is the theme of my career.
And it's such a key thread throughout this journey. And I've so enjoyed reading your book. And when you have these relationships, good things can happen. People are more willing to help you out, right? I think someone at Verizon gave you advice early on. You were, I think, smoking or something like this, and they and showing up, hungover to work and this kind of stuff. Wasn't there
Well, a
some
couple
advice?
couple people at Verizon gave me some really good advice. And when I was younger and creating chaos for myself, thinking that was how I wanted to live my life, as they were helping me figure that out, one of my managers at the time, early managers, would pull me aside and say, "You literally stink like cigarettes." Smoking had become taboo. I was smoking a pack a day. I was on my own. I was I was injuring myself and not really working at peak performance. And as I sort of learned that those things are going to prevent growth, whether it be in your career or personal growth, that encouragement came from a coworker who felt the connection enough with me to go, "You stink. Like, stop smoking. It's not good." And then, honestly, the office next to hers, there was a manager who said, "And by the way, are you saving 1% in your 401k? Because you should be saving money in your 401k so that, you work for a company that will match that, and that money will grow. And stop spending your money on, fancy cars you can't afford that were just repoed." And, then the next manager said, "Hey, I have a job opportunity for you that's perfect, and I'll interview you on the spot, and I'm going to hire you into my team because I see potential there." And I honored that potential, and I honored these pieces of advice by doing what these people said. So it became very symbiotic in that regard, and that's how the relationship forged. I stopped smoking. I started saving. I did the best I could in the jobs that I was offered.
I mean,
To honor that.
it's amazing that, one, you were willing to do this outreach and ask for their support, or that they were willing to give it to you because they saw some potential in you and I think saw your motivation, which was amazing. Speaking of motivation, I'd like to just share a number of people. These sometimes the chat is a bit delayed here. I saw a number of notes just come in here. Greg Mester just said hello
Oh, hey,
in the
Greg.
chat here.
Thanks for joining, Greg. That's
Lori,
great.
let's see, Lori Lee from New Jersey.
Hi, Lori.
Let's see, Gretchen, thank you, from Orcas
Oh,
Island.
hi, Gretchen. Gretchen Kramp is my coach. We wrote all about her in chapter 6, and she helped me edit the book. I mean, in such a way that I just will be forever grateful for this piece of material. This material has her influence all over it.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
amazing. Thank you, Gretchen, for helping Scott write a great
Hey,
book.
Travis.
Travis is
Travis
on there.
Logston. Good morning. Thanks for joining. Elizabeth Mayo. She's on my team. Yeah.
All the way from
Yeah.
Baltimore. Sarah jumped on here.
Oh, Sarah's
Arlington.
a coach of. Hi, Sarah. She's a coach of. We certified with the International Coaching Federation together. We went to George Mason's preliminary work cohort together.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, she wrote in the book as well.
Greg Kaiser, all the way from South Florida. Good morning, Greg. Thanks for joining us. Holly Dawson.
Hey, high school, Holly Donnan. How are you? Good to see you.
Holly, I think this is a first high school friend showing up on Meet the Author Live, so thank you. That's fantastic.
So glad you all are here. And there's my wife.
And the superhero herself, Caitlin.
There she is, chapter 1.
Yes.
Couldn't be without her for sure.
And Laura, thank you for jumping on
Hi,
here,
Laura.
UVA.
Yeah,
I love it.
wonderful.
So much great love and support out there for you this morning. So fun to hear it. So let's get back to this amazing
Yeah,
journey you've been on in this book. Scott, what the heck really, you're a busy guy. You're running this business. You're doing all this training, trying to stay fit.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
what drove you to write this thing? How'd
Well,
you get
I
out of
didn't
bed?
just wake up. I didn't just wake up one day and decide to write a book. Instead, and yet sort of another unconventional path to my journey, there was the unexpected death of my brother. Um, just need a minute.
Take your
But
time.
and that's really what triggered the notion of legacy. Um, I think combined with what I experienced with that, and what I was able to do with coaching, bringing those two notions of legacy and coaching, and sort of the experiences that I've shared, that I've had in business, I realized it was now, a really good opportunity, um, for me to put it at scale and put a book out there that would perhaps help others through what I've experienced and sort of unpack the lessons of unconventional success that I've endured.
So
Truthfully, it's been quite a journey, and it's been very interesting. I will also add that COVID was very helpful in that process, because we were all at home and I had a pen to paper for an entire year, which helped me navigate some of the important highlights that I think are captured well in this book.
you're clearly a man who feels and understands and empathizes with people. And, I can feel the pain you're feeling about your brother right now and his passing. And, somebody, my father passed away not long ago, and somebody gave me some
Oh, I'm
really
sorry.
interesting advice about that. Paula Doroff
Yeah.
is her name. And one of the bits of advice she gave me that that really helped me, quite frankly, it might be of help to you and others, is, when you feel those emotions, those feelings about that loved one, lean into them, feel them,
Yeah.
and don't try to hide from them. And that's really a great way. You actually said something similar, to really honor them and keep them in your
Yeah.
life. So I can't stress that
Well,
enough.
and that's why I sprinkled him in the book. I mean, some of these impactful things were instigated by that relationship, and then they were compounded with the other relationships and the other skill sets. So, I think being human is part of my journey and part of what I want people to experience, which is exactly why I'm on this podcast, and why I wanted to do this with you, John, is I think we really connected at that sort of that level of, wow, we were so corporate. What about being human in corporate? With your journey too, right?
Is that a thing, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the number of times I felt it was fascinating over the years, as people would ask me how I was working on this initiative or that initiative when I was working on Wall Street. And I would share with them ideas around how I was really trying to connect and learn from my people about how to really empower them the best. And their response was often like, "What are you talking about? Go sell something."
Right. Make money. Show me the money.
Right. And,
Yeah.
it turns out that strategy was pretty impactful over time. I love the title of your book, right? How did
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
get here? Where did that come from?
Well, maybe Holly Donnan will know, because she knew me in high school where I was a little on the edge. I I was not probably suited for the path I'm on. I was not set up for success. I didn't understand the value of the things that I unpack in this book, that I learned through my time at Verizon, that I've learned through my relationship with my wife, that I learned through my brother's passing, that I learned in corporate. I was busy getting my car repoed, charging up credit cards, smoking cigarettes, partying all the time, and being sort of an idiot. Um, and I think that
Sort
when
of.
I sort of, well, maybe primarily, when I left the world that I was doing that in, and I was able to find my way, when I go back to see folks, they would literally be like, "How did you get here? Like, how did you get here?" And then it sort of turned into, "How did you, of all people, get here?" And so I thought it was funny, because it was sort of a backhanded compliment at times. It was like, wait a minute. So as I thought about the book title, I thought that was really fitting. And I also want that to be something that the readers can take and apply. A lot of what I wrote in this book, and a lot of the ways that I end each chapter, is to have folks sort of reflect on their journey and what they find in their relationships and their partnerships. What I talk about in this book is not unique, but what I found is that we don't always talk about it. And that's what I think makes it unique. So I put my anecdotes in the book so that we can sort of humanize it and then talk about it. You aren't successful on an island. You're not advancing your career by yourself. I mean, there are very few people that created things, and even those things that were created that are monstrous, hugely successful, require people to lift them. And so I think, I want to share that the anecdotes and the stories in my book and the way that I titled this and the questions at the end of each chapter are really geared towards my readers to sort of be able to look and self-reflect in that genre of, that it's turning the tables a little bit, not just about me. I mean, who cares about just me? It's how you apply about me that I really wanted that title and the questions at each chapter to guide you through.
Fascinating how many, I can only imagine the legions of people that have been surprised by your outcome, given some of the stories you share in the book about,
I'm the biggest one, by the way. I'm the
right?
most surprised.
I mean, it was a yellow Honda Prelude. Was that right? Is that the
It
car?
was. It
Yeah,
was. It was my
that
end
got
all be all car. I loved it.
the
I
little
went
whale
and
tail on the back, right?
oh yeah. Well, the cell phone, the spirally cord off the back, because it had to have a cell phone. And, Bell Atlantic Mobile put phones in the cars then. Yeah, and I couldn't afford it, and I had to go buy groceries, so I bought beer instead of groceries or car payments. And that car was literally repoed out of my front yard. And that was a real waking moment when the next car I could afford was $500, and I had to go into my career office driving that car.
I
So
mean,
these are turning moments that, yeah.
you have that line in the book where you essentially talk about the fact that, I see everyone around me sees me as a complete loser, right? I've lost my car. I smell like cigarettes all the time. And yet you kept finding these relationships and finding help and realize something bigger and better is out there, and where did you start to see relationships? Where did you start to see the value in them and sort of figure out how to bring them into your life?
Well, I always had such a strong early in my career that when I went right out of high school into my job at Bell Atlantic, and I was really fortunate there that I had a good team of leaders and managers and friends, and that fraternity that we created propelled me into an assignment that sent me to Virginia Beach, where I met really corporate executive leader types. And I literally asked them if they, had openings, I would like to apply for it. I saw this opportunity as one I couldn't go back to where I'd come from. And I was literally asking anyone who had an opportunity for a guy like me for a job. And Julie Harner picked me up, and she said, I'm gonna have you move to Virginia. I'm gonna open up a help desk for, this center that you're on special assignment with. And I'm gonna teach you the lessons of management. I'm gonna expose you to opportunities. I'm going to dust you off. I'm going to show you what you need to do here in the DC area as a young man. So I'm going to balance it with what you're capable of as well. And so she wasn't, trajecting me real fast, but I ended up sort of on a fast track from there, where I met really good people. Pat DiLella promoted and hired me. Pat DiLella and I worked together for 27 years. She's one of the biggest mentors, if not the biggest mentor I've ever had. And these are the people you meet, and you help each other out, and you move through life with these people, and opportunity, career, and then dare I say money follows.
It's
And so I
amazing.
think it's really important. And the last thing I'll say is that I always recognized I didn't have much to offer. So what I did was honor the opportunity. I mean, what can I do to pay Pat DiLella and Julie Harner back? I can talk about them in my book.
I would argue you did have a lot to offer, but maybe just didn't see your own potential as you set, and clearly they did, which is so amazing. And
Yeah,
based
thank you.
on you did this relationship building with them, and they really saw something in you and said, "Hey, I want to help this guy out." I think you had a story. I think it was Julie that she kind of helped you learn how to build relationships with others within your client base. Was that her story?
No,
No, all right, got my wires crossed.
Julie was the one that helped me move to Virginia and set me up on a track that exposed me to how not to be, how to be more corporate and more successful by working with the folks in more of a corporate environment. Pat also did the same thing. And then Pat also helped me when I launched WorldGate with opportunities within the company she had evolved to. And, she was a family member. She is a family member and a mentor to all of that. So I think for me, networking was realized fairly early, and exposing opportunity and bringing others with you, and then honoring the opportunities by doing the best you can is really what it's about for me. And that's really, really important. One of the reasons I share this and I want to be on these sort of platforms is so that people recognize, one, the human aspect of your career, but if I can do it, anyone can, and I couldn't do it without the people. And that's what I call relationships. And they all have varying levers. And if you honor them and you're authentic with them and you do the best you can with them, you will be successful. Period. Money or no money. You know what I mean?
Relationships matter.
I
And,
think.
I found in my life's journey, my dad was a salesman. So anytime we were out and about on town, it was like we were constantly stopping and he'd just start conversations with seemed like just about anybody about anything. And he was always doing this great sort of relationship building. And I think I learned a lot from that. And then, of course, I went on to become a traveling salesman. And I think about, uh, when I think about that for you, where do you see sort of the starting point for people? Because a lot of people see relationship building and networking as sort of a struggle and an awkward thing. If you were somebody who's maybe a younger person thinking about where do we even start with this stuff, Scott, it feels really uncomfortable. What would you tell that person?
I would say go with your gut. I really would. I would say don't stretch yourself beyond your aptitude for networking. You don't want to throw yourself into the mix. I don't want to stand in front of a room of 400 people. So then I did a LinkedIn Live. It's much easier. Right. So I'm stretching myself, but I'm not, crippling myself. So I think there's a lever. I was fortunate enough, Pat DeLella's son, Frank, had me at Fordham University a couple months ago, and we were able to talk to the classroom about my book as sort of a understanding. This is some of the lessons you might want to consider as you leave college and go into the career world. And one of the students asked me point blank, when do I draw the line between familial relationships and corporate relationships? And the only way I could really answer that back to her was, you tell me.
And what was her response?
Oh, she wheels are turning, but I think that matters because you don't want to overextend yourself, but you also want to be able to be comfortable and trusting in relationships, right? So she was struggling with thinking you had to jump right into family relationships if you're going to be networking in corporate. And I was trying to expose to her the opportunity to blend those two is relevant. It's relevant, And also, how do you feel about it? When I met Pat DeLella, I knew in an instant. It was the weirdest thing. I had a somatic response to the power of the connection. And, Pat's been around for 30 years since. And she's, she knows my children and she's there as a force for us. And her son even had me at Fordham talking to their class. So we've intertwined that. And I think it's a really good thing to share with people because don't be afraid of that. It can be really what drives your success.
Just to bring more of yourself to work, and if you will,
and Gretchen. And well, let's talk about Gretchen, who's on with us today. Gretchen and I met when I was attempting to be a realtor back in 2007, and I kept showing up at her condo and leaving my business card. There she is. Our stories all have such many hearts and open channels for connections, right? Well, Gretchen's been my leadership coach for 15 years since I tried to sell her condo. I've worked for her husband. She's done work for our clients. She's been my coach. She helped me edit the book, right? So look at all the power that comes from that relationship. And I'm moving you around different quadrants of how they are and how they blend themselves in. I was on the phone with Gretchen when Caitlin called to say to me back then, I think the twins are coming. I said, Gretchen, I got to go. And the twins are in 10th grade now, right? So I blend all that. I really do blend all that. And I find that if you own that blending, that you're going to find success together. It's really, really important. And that's how I do it. And, we haven't even touched on Caitlin's chapter yet. I mean, without that backdrop and without the partnering that you must have to be successful, and she's in life and at work, the power of that really needs to be shared with people because they're very different. Yeah,
you have this amazing ability to sort of have this, I'll say, multi-pronged levels of relationships with people. You don't sort of silo them and say, oh, this is my work relationship, this is my personal relationship. They so often blend in your life. And it's probably a big attribute to how you've had these relationships for so many years. And of course, I love this concept you shared around honoring people in your relationship by taking their advice, by offering them advice and having that sort of symbiotic relationship. You
Say
mentioned
that
Caitlin.
again, though. Say that again, though, because that's so important. About so many people I see silo. This student was asking, where's the line? The line is really yours, but I'm going to guess if you push that line a little bit, you're going to find more success than if you don't.
Right? And why,
That's really
and why
important.
is that?
I'm living proof of that. That's my belief. That's what my books, that's what chapter 2 is about. That's what I'm trying to say to people, is push that limit a little bit. If you close the door on opportunity, you don't network, or you don't try, you're not going anywhere with that relationship. You'd be surprised what you can do.
And it's got to be a two-way street, right? And you've got to find ways to connect. I reached out to a gal I worked with 20 something years ago recently, and I hadn't talked to her in years. And I saw something about LinkedIn on her. I thought it was kind of interesting. And I literally sent her a note out of the blue. It was like 25 years since we talked. And not only did we have a lovely chat just a few weeks ago and reconnected and maybe have some interesting things to work on in the coming months and years, but I was able to connect her with a couple of people in my network. And she is the CEO of a company now. And she was not the CEO when I knew her back years ago. And I got to tell you, talk about honoring and building relationships. The people I connected her with, and I'm amazed how often I don't see people do this. She actually sent me a follow-up note and said, "Thank you for connecting me with this person. I actually spoke to them. What a fan! I'm so glad you connected me with them." And I feel like I do that a lot. I'm oftentimes surprised by people. I never hear the sort of closing of the loop on it. And here's a CEO of a company who did it. And surprise, surprise, she's had this incredible run in her life.
Right.
About relationship
and the next generation needs to understand that. I do believe that that's part of why I was happy to be in that college classroom, encouraging the next generation, please network. I ran around the halls of Verizon, dropping invitations for coffee every chance I got. I took the opportunity and I ran with it. Now I'm a little tired. Now I'm trying to pay it forward. I don't know if I'm going to be doing that.
Before we get to the partnership story, can you tell a little bit more about that one? Because that's an interesting one. And I think especially for younger folks trying to figure out, gosh, I work for this company. How do I sort of build these relationships? What was it? What exactly were you doing there with dropping these notes around Verizon?
Well, it wasn't really notes. And back at the day, this is the 90s. So you were in person and you were face to face. I don't think we even had cell phones clipped to our hips yet. Pagers were barely coming out. No, the perimeter offices were executives and the inner cubes were me and people like me doing various jobs. And I had an interest to be more involved. I was newsy. I wanted to see what it was about. I wanted to understand how they had a perimeter office. I was curious. And if you can bring curiosity, that's going to bring opportunity. And so being curious, man, I showed up in the door and been like, hey, I'm here. I work in the cubes outside your office. What's going on? And I think that really is a simple notion that I really want to get across, because that's as simple as networking can be. I showed up in Pat DeLella's doorway and said, I just didn't get that job and I don't have a job. And she said, I have a job and thanks for showing up. You can start next week. And that changes your whole life and the trajectory of it. And I think that people miss that opportunity. They hide behind closed doors. They're not curious. It wasn't that I was looking for a job. I was curious about what the next opportunity could be. Very different in my approach. And I was curious about them as well. Authentically, like, how did you get here? Quite frankly, what are you doing in this perimeter office?
This question has been part of your life forever, it seems.
Exactly.
I love that. And, it's such a good lesson when I think about my own career early on. I worked in the Two World Trade Center actually for many years in a big call center with, tons of people. And it was like a beehive every day. And I remember sort of figuring out, I kept sort of getting stuck at each promotion level. It'd kind of take me a while I'd get to a point where, sort of time to be promoted, if you will. I'd done enough time, 12 months or 24 months or whatever the number was they had. And it didn't sort of land on me until I started to go around and talk to lots of people in different departments to figure out, like, tell me more about how this business works, so I could take sort of more of an enterprise view and get exposed to more opportunities and come in early and stay late once in a while and hear people's stories. And these are lessons, I just kind of figured out almost by accident, really, and just sort of being curious, as you said. So I love that theme. It's been a big theme in my life as well, and certainly one with yours.
I love that you validate it, because that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. And I think for those who are either looking for new opportunities or those who are merging into their careers or shifting their careers, bring that human aspect to it, please. I think you'll find it more rewarding. I found it more rewarding, and that's what I'm trying to share.
Yeah, and this is where opportunities can almost become infinity, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so there's this sort of theme in your book around this kite and the string
yeah.
idea in your story on partnerships and relationship building there. What's the kite and the string? What's that story about?
So with every door that I went into in the perimeter offices, there was a new shiny idea that I wanted to tackle. Let's do that, and let's do that, and let's do that, and let's do that. And anything, let's try it all on. And Caitlin has been a very, very smart grounding force to some of that visionary that I bring to the table around opportunity. And so, it was fun because we were at an event where Jack Nicklaus was hosting a happy hour that we got invited to. And as we were there, I'm like, maybe we should own a golf course. Like I'm just all over the place. Maybe we should buy a golf course. And, I was so excited about the opportunity of the networking and being involved in this very successful group of people. And, Caitlin leaned over and she said, God, I hope I'm just not too much a string to your kite. And it was funny because she was apologetic about it. And I was like, do not even. First of all, it was the first time I'd heard of her ever considering herself that. We'd been together for 20 years at that point. And secondly, it was so interesting to me that she felt it needed an apology because what's the magic is the kite and string are finding the success together. That, that's what's the grounding force is how I pull her up also. And she wasn't seeing that. So I think she called it the kite and string, and I thought it was a really good analogy to how partnerships really matter as you're forging relationships too. And Caitlin is the supreme. She's the one. She's the force and the wife and the mother of my children and the partner in life. And there is to be no other 25 years later.
And I love the analogy of sort of one end of the kite is sort of lifting it away, and the other person is holding it
Right.
back. And when you find that balance, that's when a kite can really perform very well, which is fantastic.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
and one of the other things you talk about, and I think this is part of this curiosity story, is really finding that connection. And what does that look like? I recall a story with a personal trainer you shared and how you were able to connect with somebody quickly. What happened with that person?
Oh yeah, so Ron Cook, and I hope he's on. He would really get a kick out of this. He's really a great guy, and I was at the gym often, and I was certifying for my coaching certification with Sarah, who we saw was on today. Hi, Sarah. Anyway, I was at the gym, and Ron said to me one afternoon, "I really see you often in here, and I wonder if I could engage you as a personal trainer. And here's the model." And I was like, "I don't think so. I don't need a personal trainer." But interesting, you would pick me out of the consistency of training and the consistency. Tell me about yourself. And we ended up chatting, and we ended up forging a relationship of connection there. And as I was certifying for my coaching, I was applying what I was learning to our conversations, and he was able to benefit by that because he was able to see himself in a different light through the questions I was asking him and through the way in which I was engaging him. And he had never really seen himself as anything other than, a fitness enthusiast. And his friends didn't really encourage that. They thought, he'll just work at the gym forever. And he wanted more for himself. And he was opening that up to me. And I said to him, well, look, you sound like a salesman. I mean, you came straight up to me and said, yo, I'm trying to get some personal training. Will you hire me? And I said, so why don't we take a look at that? And we unpacked that together. He came to the office. We started some, pro bono coaching. I wasn't quite certified yet, so I was learning. He was navigating that with me. And at the end of the day, he ended up leaving the gym, and now he's the director of a fairly significant sales force, selling to the federal space with a fairly high, very high sales quota. And he's just found his success through that opportunity, right? And that's his networking of me, if you will. And being able to pay that forward and help him expose that has just been such a nice journey. He's been on our podcast. I have my own How Did You Get Here? Lessons of Unconventional Success podcast that he's joined. But he also sends me a text every year and says, here we are on the anniversary, and thanks for all the advice. And he remembers very specific and deliberately what it did for him to navigate his future. And I just love the story because he was helping me as much as I was helping him. And look at what's now moving into almost a 5-6 year relationship based on the foundation of success.
And what really gets me in that story is just the illustration of how you think about things, how you always seek win-wins. And I think more importantly, how as a coach and really how, it's this great advisor you become in life and coach, how you help people reframe things. So many times we can limit our own beliefs, and we just need somebody to help us kind of look at it from this new angle to see, oh my gosh, there's a whole opportunity set here I hadn't even considered. Clearly you've done that. I've got a couple more questions for Scott here.
All right,
I'm going to open up to the audience, and then so please start dropping those in the chat. I see a few showing up.
I'm excited.
And we'll see what the audience has to say. And if you want to learn more about Scott, his book, his podcast, definitely go to howdidyougethere.com or connect with him on LinkedIn at Scott Montgomery ACC.
Please.
Is his handle there. So a big part of this journey has been about peak performance, certainly with the triathlons and others. But what is, that taught you much about your leadership journey and performance? What did you learn from the bike seat all those miles?
Oh yeah, and Gretchen helped me fine tune the line on that one, where I learned leadership from the seat of my bike. That quick story is that I was in that first triathlon, and as I was hitting the midpoint of the race, I took my hands off the handlebar to grab water in one of the watering stations, and immediately disqualified after by a cop. I have an official on a motorcycle, and I was sent back to start. Sent back to the start. And I was like, wait, what? After all this training, I've been disqualified?
Oh.
And all the emotions that come up from that. And I was literally mile 26 on a 53-mile bike ride halfway through the race, literally. All the emotions that I had to run through to get back to the finish line where I thought and knew my kids would be. I was able to say, you know what? My kids are going to be looking to me for leadership from the seat of this bike. And if I come back there with all, piss and vinegar and angry and mad, and it's always somebody else's fault, then what's that teaching, this 10-year-old and this 8-year-old? So when I came back, I was all smiles and says, I can't believe this. I can't even believe what's happened here, but I was disqualified, guys. And I tried to bring levity to the moment. And what happened after that was fascinating to me for like the next 12 hours. And that is, at that moment that I racked my bike to call it quits, the official winner, Andy Potts, came in and literally happened to walk by my bike. And so in that split second, I decided to say, hey, Andy, you and I are complete opposites in this race. You literally just won, and I'm literally disqualified. And I'm not allowed to. It's exactly right. And as we chatted for just a few minutes, he had to go to the podium to get his trophies. I explained what had happened, and he said, I'd never heard that rule before. And he was a professional triathlete. So he had never heard. So it was a little, made me feel a little bit better. But again, it was about what my kids saw in these moments, right? And it was about meeting with the winner of the race. We took a selfie. I still have this selfie. And it just sort of represents the way that this turns positive. I got free tickets to another race. I got to hang out with a group of people I wouldn't have got to hang out with at the pool that afternoon that were part of the race. And network the event more than actually participate in the event, which I found more rewarding. Lastly, I decided to do this race again the following year, continue the training, stay at peak performance, work on not taking my hands off the handlebars. And as a result, when we went back the next year to kind of assess the grounds, I was at the swim entrance, and the moderator of the race was there too with his clipboard, and it was the night before. And he literally saw my kids and said, hey, we remember you from last year getting kicked out. You were one of 3 that got disqualified for hands off the handlebars. And he said to the kids, do you guys want to kick off Dad's heat tomorrow? And so my kids actually got the microphone and got to kick off the heat of the triathlon the following year. And none of that would have happened if I was disgruntled and angry and blustery and it's not my fault. I can't believe this happened. But instead, I got to do the race twice. I finished. I got my kids to moderate the race, and I got to network so many different opportunities, and I even got an invitation to another free race. And if you can look at life that way, that's what leadership looks like from the seat of your bike.
I mean, talk about a tale of two potentials there, right? You easily could have just been angry and gone and, stomped your feet and sort of shown that to your kids, right? And instead you chose to take the high road and say, something happened here today, but it was a great experience. And what can I learn from this? And, one of the things I've learned over life, and it sounds very parallel here, is, everything in life is a gift, right? What can you learn from it? How can you grow from it as opposed to get angry? And I've seen so many people in my life, kind of throw away a lot of things because they couldn't get over one circumstance or one loss or one rejection or something like this. What a powerful story. Where do you think that mindset came from?
Well, I was working in peak performance, so I was literally, laser sharp. I was physically fit. My mind was on point. I was still fairly young. I was in my early 40s,
Not
so I
smoking.
felt
Yeah,
I
yeah.
felt better. I wasn't smoking, and I think the 26-mile bike ride. I might confess that the first 10 on my way back, I was a little like, "What the hell just happened? I can't believe this. Why they picked me of all people?" But I think I had a little bit of a minute. Take the minute and think about what your response is going to be. And I think that's what happened. There was a lot of carnage. I remember riding my bike back, and there was like a helmet and a bloody rag and a bike tire. And as I was riding back, I'm like, I've just been through a war zone. This is crazy. And I think I got those distractions and helped me realize like I was in a first world scenario here, and this was a really cool opportunity. And it really yielded the results I'd hoped. And generally, that's what I think it's about. That's how I got here. The
This
relationship, all of it. Yeah.
relationship, the right mindset is absolutely incredible. So thinking about this sort of journey you've been on, and certainly it's not over yet, right?
I
How do
hope.
you sort of see relationship building today versus what it was like, 25, 30 years ago?
Well, what a great segue, and my coach is on, Gretchen's listening. And I think for me, the relationship is going to be the pay it forward part, right? And the reason I bring her in is because I'm struggling with how I want to hang my shingle as a coach versus do I still want to have a little bit of fight left in me? And I think she must be frustrated with me as I'm like, let's do the how did you get here and let's do some coaching. And I'm like, well, maybe not yet. But I do see myself as building relationships for the next generation. I think paying forward this message, getting in front of folks that need this advice. And I tend to think they're maybe more entering the workforce, maybe mid career, early career. Anyone can help, but I'd really like to move it to coaching. I'd really like to move it to one-on-one relationships and sort of help people expand their triathlon experiences.
That's awesome. So not only relationship building early on was about how do I sort of help myself and build my career, and I'm not even sure what the heck I'm trying to do here. And then we started to
Right.
figure out goal setting and figure out how to learn from others. And I love this concept of honoring their advice. Right? There's I
Yeah.
think few things worse than asking someone for their advice and then just doing nothing with it. Right?
Right.
And it happens. Right?
Yeah.
And that I think can kind of ruin relationships. And clearly you've just leaned into these relationships in such a powerful way. When you think about this book, Scott, and again, then we're going to jump to audience questions here, and this will be our last one. How would you suggest readers consume it?
It's a quick, easy read. It's broken out in chapters. It starts with Caitlin, partnerships. It moves to mentors, relationships. It talks about habits and goals and structure around objectives. I move right then into leadership, communication, getting a coach, asking for someone to be on this journey with you, and then we wrap it up from there. It's very digestible. Each chapter ends with 5 questions. And I will honor that Ellen Fulton, who is one of the certifying board members for my certification, actually helped me craft those questions to move the stories of the chapters to the questions so they can be applied to the readers. So at the end of each of these chapters that I refer to, habits, goal setting, there are questions that you can then deliberate for yourself how you would set your goals or your habits accordingly. And the only reason I put the anecdotes in is for the legacy piece and for the context piece. So people kind of understood where I was coming from on the topics. And then lastly, and it's a quick, easy read. It's 140 pages. I think people should be able to plow through it in 4 or 5 hours, or better still, listen to it. It is on Spotify and it is out in all the platforms right now. We just finished that up. And I'm working on a companion guide. Gretchen helped me with that term. I don't want to call it a workbook anymore because that's too scary to me, but a companion guide will expand on the questions. And I'm hoping that'll be out this spring. And so it's really a self-help sort of scenario. Read the book, get what you need out of it, and then work on those chapters through the questions in the companion guide.
Yeah, I really appreciated the questions at the end of the chapters. I'm looking at the one on habits right now. What habits support your well-being success? What habits detract from your optimal outcome? I mean, such great and thoughtful questions here. What habits do you wish you practiced but currently don't? And so, right, as you shared earlier, these aren't sort of rocket science, but it's getting people to really get down to the core of what you do every day, because what you do impacts your outcomes, right?
Yeah. Yeah. What did you tell me you do now every day as a result of reading this book? I
All
love
right.
this.
And I was so hit or miss with it. And now I've done it every day since I read your book, which is making my bed. And it's had a really positive impact on me because I often work from home, and I find when I walked by my room and sort of saw it a mess, it was actually very frustrating to me. And I thought, well, that's annoying. And it sort of, it kind of put me off, if you will. And now I walk by and see, oh, things are together. It makes me feel more organized. And I love that. So thank you for that,
Well,
pushing that on me.
I appreciate the example, and I hate to take it from the general who, went social media crazy on make your bed, but
Right.
it's about lather, rinse, repeat, right? So for me, it's about structure, order. It's about repeat actions on the mundane activities of your life that allow you then to be in peak performance and not noisy on the other things that really matter, which is the nuance of forging relationships, which is the nuance of your partnerships, which is the nuance of where you want to traject yourself. And so I think that's a really important highlight to what you mean by make your bed. And I call it lather, rinse, repeat. And it's about clearing the space to be in peak performance.
So it's such a good lesson. I really appreciate that. And as I said, I do it all the time now.
Good.
And I want to get into some of the comments and questions here now. Gretchen put one in here that talks, I think she put this in when we were talking about sort of the thoughts around passing away and the CEO note that I shared. But this gap in relational awareness, what do you think that's about? Why does that exist, and what can we do about it?
Not tracking, John, your story about the CEO's note. Yeah.
She said that just having 1,000 friends and that one is not connecting with you may be a gap in relational awareness. So I think it's around, I think what she's getting at here is, do you understand this relationship, or how do you better understand relationships might be a way to frame that question and sort of reach into them.
Yeah, I think a relationship is not a connection on LinkedIn. A relationship is interacting. And I think what she's saying there is you can have 1 million followers and not one relationship in them. I think that's what you're trying to say, Gretchen. And I think that's a valid point in that you have to have connection, and there has to be human connection there. We don't live all in a virtual world, and it is becoming that. And that's another powerful use of this book. And that is to say, ground yourself and be human, not electronic. And I think that's a really important thing to bring up, Gretchen, because you don't want to put value on one-dimensional things like connections on social media. And LinkedIn is a form of social media, if you ask me.
Yeah, and just this, and having that awareness that, hey, there's two people involved here, and how can we sort of both benefit from this relationship, right? And make deposits in it.
Yeah, good way to put it. Make deposits in it. Yeah.
Yeah, because someday, right, something's going to be off, not going to work. You're going to need help more than they need, but you've got to have those sort of deposits made. So it's
right.
A joint relationship. I love that. One of the questions I got in another chat somebody sent me is around, where did the idea from WorldGate come from and supporting K through 12 kids?
So actually, that's an interesting topic. So Pat DeLella, the mentor I had in Verizon, actually ended up working in a school district and engaged me as a consultant for her 20 some odd years ago. And I was fortunate enough to be able to have WorldGate, which is a company name that is just pulled out of the air by me at a gym that was called WorldGate Sport and Health. 25 years ago, I had registered the business. I'd registered it with Caitlin and I. And when Pat asked to engage me, I was able to do that and run it through that business. And as I was in there supporting her, I was able to network, and I was able to get additional business and learn that that's a real interesting topic for me. I'm passionate about the next generation. I was really intrigued by the way the facilities operate and how that industry works. And I found really good people I wanted to partner with, Pat included, and they embraced what I brought to the table. So it was very symbiotic and incredibly powerful. And the things that we have been through have just been what most would call unsurmountable and totally achievable by working together. And I have found, now that I have children in the system, ways in which I can help with food insecurities and ways that I can help with, coat drives and some of the things that not everyday people see are going on in these, areas of where you think there isn't a problem, there really is. And I think it just sort of compounded from there for me. And Caitlin the same way. I mean, Caitlin's really passionate about the kids, and it became mission-based work that had a value. And I think it's been really a nice ride.
So many powerful themes throughout your journey, constantly learning, right?
Yeah,
Accepting that you
yeah.
don't know it all, being curious, reaching out to others, trying to help others, and also building these deep connections and relationships. One more question here, and we'll jump over to the rapid fire. And I did drop Scott's
Okay.
website in here if you want to click on it and check out
Thank you.
his book and his podcast. How did you get here? And certainly connect with him on LinkedIn. I'll drop that link in here in a second as well. So from Linda Wilson, and the chapter on communication, you say 55% of communication is done through body language in these
Yeah.
post-COVID days of less in-person meetings and relying on, I'll put it on the screen so you can see it, and
Yeah.
relying on more on email. How do you get around
Hi,
that?
Linda. Hi, Linda. I love it. Thank you for asking. I'm getting a real charge out of seeing all this online. I think for us and for the way that we operate with our customers and in relationships, one of the body language is really key. And one of the ways we get around it in the virtual world is screen on. I want to see your face. I mean, it's as simple as that. And I think that the cues and the way that people respond visually, even on screen, is the same, if maybe not as fully effective, but is the same as if you're in person. So we have a requirement at WorldGate that you're screen on when you're talking to our clients, unless agreed otherwise. And I think that's a really important way to kind of get express interest, express engagement, expressed awareness. And Gretchen just said it, cameras on, and that's the way to go.
I love that. And, one of the, because it's amazing the last number of years that people I've connected with all over the world. And I'll tell you, one of the tactics I use, if I could share it, is around sort of more of a cold open with calls, particularly with people you don't know. Instead of just getting on and saying, hello, I'm this person and I've got this, fancy background and bragging about your credentials or whatever. I find just sort of getting right into a conversation with people and more of a cold open, I find really impactful, and just being curious, as you shared. It really helps. I was chatting with a gal the other day in Dubai, and in 3 minutes into the call, she goes, I feel like I've known you forever. It was really interesting. It was really interesting. All right, let's jump over to the rapid fire questions here, buddy.
Okay.
Are you ready to get into it? And then we'll wrap this thing up.
I'm ready.
Favorite thing to cook?
Roasted chicken, because I get to carve it afterwards too. And it smells good. Yeah.
First concert you went to?
Pink Floyd, 1986.
Wow. Last photo on your phone?
Oh, good question. Let's take a look. Oh, it's a Ferrari with a student driver sticker on the back of it. That was worthy of a photo.
That's amazing. Scariest animal?
Oh, a spider. Does that count? I mean, a spider is scary.
They really get a bad rap on this show.
Yeah, I hate spiders.
Most audacious goal for your book?
A huge firm uses it as a platform to teach a training class in leadership. A huge firm like Google, Facebook, and they buy 2,500 copies and make it something incredible for their organization. I think that's audacious and sounds super scary right now until we make it happen.
No reason Google shouldn't have 200,000 copies of your book. I'm just going to put it out there.
Thank you.
Describe your writer-author journey in 5 words, if you would.
Long, painful, scary. Long, painful.
I'm gonna add a 6th word, rewarding. How about that?
Okay, fair enough.
Unbelievable. Scott, closing thoughts for our listeners here.
I want one more question. We've got 8 minutes.
All right, let's see.
I want to see what they got up on the board here. I'm having fun with the audience. Can't we go for another hour?
Did I miss any? Caitlin, you forgot being on this.
Oh, thank you, Caitlin. You're right. I do have an audacious goal of being on the Today Show, but I'm learning more and more that that's pay to play. So I don't know that I'm going to pay for that.
Yeah, it's tricky. We do have a couple other fun comments in here, and I do want to
let's see them. Yeah.
Let's see. Elizabeth made a comment about her late husband and brother has greatly impacted her perspective on life work, changed what I valued and what is important to me, especially relationships. Thank you for sharing that, Elizabeth.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. Totally.
There's a number of others on here. Let's see. Gretchen, touch our lives and hearts, open channels of connection.
Yeah.
Right? So important.
Nice. She's so eloquent.
It's really beautiful. What is the wolf pack?
Oh, I didn't bring my boys into the mix.
Oh, the boys.
Yeah. My buddies. So my buddies here in Virginia and I have created what we call a wolf pack. And, we've been through thick and thin a lot. And we go to Kiowa every year. That's where it started, and we play golf. And actually, John, I will confess that just last weekend we were in Sarasota together, and I had a cigarette. You can't get away from them. But the wolf pack thing is really important. I think people need, and they're in the relationships chapter. I do talk about them in the relationships chapter, about that bond and that sort of separate connection and how we support each other. They're all middle-aged men like me. They all have, between us, I think we have like 16 kids. I don't know. And we're all building our business and our careers, and we have a safe place to communicate with each other and sort of talk about how we feel and validate those feelings with each other. And I really honor that with those relationships. I'm glad Gretchen brought that up, because they're really important people, Chris, Jeff, and Matt. And I think that's another component to relationships that we didn't get a chance to talk into today. But if you have your wolf pack, do your best to keep it. And if you don't have one, maybe try and work on creating one. I've found real value in that, creating sort of a grounding for me.
Yeah, so often, I think, particularly as men, it's hard to sort of find that group of people you can have these open and candid conversations with about what you're struggling with and challenged with, and have those open conversations. So how powerful that you have that in your life. And these are guys you've known for years and years, right?
Yeah, we met. One of the biggest social aspects when I moved to Virginia, when Julie was helping me, she showed me where the gym was. Well, the guy that owns the gym ended up being a reader in my wedding, and most of my social circle are people I met at the gym back then, and we've all sort of grown up together since. And so, I've tried to instill that even with my own children, that the gym is a great place to meet people, but further, continuity of location. So if you're a library person, go to the library a lot. If you're, a car person, go to car shows a lot. You will find your people and you will create your wolf pack. And so for me, it was the gym. And it was those years I was getting rid of the cigarettes, and I was getting rid of the bad habits and slowing down the drinking and stopping all the stuff that was, creating chaos out of chaos,
And you made it on, and it moved on in such a beautiful way. And it's great that, you've had this theme of relationships. And, another thing we haven't shared with our audience yet is this show that you have out there as well. How Did You Get Here? The podcast, right? And so I'll drop the link in the chat there. So people, if they want to listen to your podcast, they can go check that out. What do you talk about in the podcast?
So that podcast is great. And I'll give credit to Linda Misegatis, who is a partner of WorldGates, in that she works at UKG, and WorldGate partners with UKG. Elizabeth Mayo and Travis Logston are both on that team here at WorldGate. And she was really interested in what we're talking about for me, and said, you know what, we should do a podcast, and I'll help you kick that thing off. And we'll go do that right now. And I think it'll help both our businesses. It'll help you get familiar with your topics and make you feel a little bit more comfortable in your skin about being human in business. And I remember I had COVID about a year ago, and I was dying of like this illness. And she's like, yay or nay right now. And so hats off to her for kicking it off, because since then we've interviewed 39 people. It's called An Unconventional Guide to Success. We are able to unpack people's careers, unpack what they find valuable and what they did. And the biggest takeaway for me is most everyone, if not everyone, is literally talking about finding success the way that my book describes. In other words, I didn't create these topics. They're all topics that, if you pay attention and get a chance to discuss, will emerge on their own. So the podcast is not themed around my book. It's themed around success. It's themed around leadership. It's themed around how did you find yourself where you are? And people talk about making their bed, lather, rinse, repeat, communication, screens on, videos on, cameras on. And they talk about all these things. And I'm just so thrilled about how that's working out for getting people involved. And, I've even invited you, John. I'm looking forward to having you on. And we have another season coming up in March, season 4. But it talks about the things we've talked about here today, and we try and break it down by guest, so that they can give their perspective. But it's really, really going well. We're on Spotify. We're on some of the big places, YouTube, and we're hoping to get some sponsors and just keep moving it along. See what happens.
It's awesome. And you can learn more about it as well at howdidyoughere.com. And I dropped the link in the chat.
Thank you.
Also, if people want to check that out. Unbelievable story. So many powerful themes here to help us carry both our personal, professional lives along the way. And I think I hear another theme of just really finding that balance along the way, and having that partner along the way to sort of tug on the string once in a while when you start flying too high.
Can't do it without Caitlin. Cannot do it without Caitlin.
What a lovely message, and so many beautiful people in your life that have been supporting you for so long. with that, I think we're almost the top of the hour here, buddy. What
John, thank
thoughts
you.
you'd like to
Thank
leave
you.
our listeners with?
Yeah, no, thank you all for joining. I'm so thrilled to see some of these names on here. I can't wait to see the whole list. I haven't been able to see what's going on, so I'm behind the camera. But Holly, thank you for joining, and Sarah and Travis and all the folks. I can't wait to go through all the questions, and I really appreciate everyone's attention to this. And please do reach out if we can move together on initiatives around this. I'm all in. And John, thank you. It's been really nice to meet you through this process. I'm looking forward to staying in touch as we continue our journeys in the world of helping the next generation.
I can't certainly would say the same, and I'm going to drop your LinkedIn link in there just one more time if people want to see that. And I want to say thank you, Scott, for sharing your journey with me and the show. One of the life offers so few linear paths, and certainly neither of us have really had one. But that doesn't mean you can't find success, and that's what your story's about. And I really appreciate you sharing your stories and this authenticity and helping us see the power of relationships and how they can impact our lives. And what happens when we take the time to input energy into building and nurturing those relationships, we can really overcome any obstacle in life. So thank you for bringing that. And thanks to our listeners for joining this episode of Meet the Author Live. Definitely go check out Scott's book. New audiobook is out as well. How Did You Get Here? The Lessons of Unconventional Success, wherever you buy books online. And connect with him on LinkedIn at Scott Montgomery ACC, or visit his website, howdyougетhere.com. And lastly, I encourage all of you to go out and get 5 copies of this book and share it with somebody who needs to hear this story, because it's a powerful lesson, life lessons to carry on. Please join me next Friday to meet John Thompson, February 16th, and Meet the Author Live. He's the author of Stack Your Deck, How to Be an Ace in Business and Life. Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, John Saunders. Keep moving forward.